These days, I'm noticing a very funny urge inside of me. Probably like many other people, I try to go out and take short walks each day around my neighborhood. And whenever I pass someone, I feel a tiny knot in my stomach. I want to run as far away from them as possible. I'm offended that they even considered walking on the same street as me at that same time that I wanted to take a walk. And on the other hand, I want to smile. I want to come close to them and connect with them. I want to hear about how they are experiencing this time at home. Usually, as people approach, I kind of do a little bit of both. I quickly smile or wave, and then I very politely move as far away from them as humanly possible. The urge to be running in both directions is the feeling of this week's Torah portion. This week we read about a number of skin afflictions that are considered Sarat, scaly diseases that make a person impure. When a person notices these skin afflictions, they are instructed to present themselves to a priest, the spiritual arbiter of matters of impurity. And then they're told to leave the camp for at least 7 days. After this time, they can return to a priest to see if their Sarat has gone away, but they will not be let back into the community until the disease has disappeared. And as the individual with Sarat leaves the camp, they're treated by the Torah like a mourner. The Torah explains, "As for the person with Sarat, they shall tear their clothing, uncover their head, cover their lips, and call out, 'Unclean, unclean.' They shall be unclean as long as the disease is on them. And being unclean, they shall dwell apart, outside of the camp." Perhaps for the individual who receives the diagnosis of Sarat, they are feeling like a mourner. Through illness, they're being asked to confront their mortality. They can't be sure when they'll be readmitted to the camp. Perhaps the Israelites will leave without them. So they tear their clothing. They yell out to anyone who can hear, "I am impure. I am impure." The Talmud, reminding us that no words in the Torah are ever wasted, asks an interesting question about this public declaration. The person could have just said the word impure once. Why did they repeat, "I am impure, I am impure"? And the Talmud answers its own question. Each time they uttered the word impure, they were saying it for a different reason. The first time the person yelled impure, they were saying, "I have an infectious disease. Stay away from me and protect yourself." And the second time they yelled impure, they were saying, "I am about to enter the scariest weeks of my life when I leave this camp. Please, please pray for me." The dual call of the one with Sarat is contradictory. I need you far away from me, and I need you close. Or really, I need you spiritually close to me and physically or socially distant. I need you to work to build a society that will welcome me and support me when I return. I need you to ensure that the camp will wait for me so that I can travel along with you. In an essay called "Those Who Turn Away Their Face, Sarat and Stigma," the Jewish thinker Rachel Adler defines Sarat as radical illness. She explains, "A radical illness is an illness that strikes at the root of our being in the world, ravaging our communities, filling witnesses with fear. Radical illness erodes the body and often the self. It takes us and unmakes us. Radical illness seems to us arbitrary. Either we don't know how to cure it, or why it struck, or we don't know how to contain its spread. There is a dread about radical illness that is greater than the sum of its parts." I read this passage and I see our current moment so clearly. Coronavirus has struck at the root of our being in the world. It's forced us to question the often too weak foundation we have built our society on. It has unmade us. It has asked many of us to question our own purpose. It reminds us what's really important. The illness does provide us with an overwhelming dread. When will all of this be over? What will change when we finally reemerge? Despite this difficulty, despite the hard questions and uncertainty, we're doing our best to live out this dual call. The call of the afflicted, impure. We're separating ourselves from the illness, ensuring that we won't spread it to others. And surely this is going to be more difficult the longer this goes on. And I hope that we'll be able to be there for each other in those times. And we're also listening to the second call. And we need to keep listening to the second call. The call that is asking us for compassion. We need to commit ourselves to building a society in which those who have been afflicted by this disease, both its medical and economic consequences, are cared for. We need to give of ourselves so that we're more prepared to come together again when we need to take on all the other great fights of this world. And we need to pray. When we pray, we build the spiritual reserve that helps us get through difficult times. We take time for gratitude, for mindfulness, for connection, and we each become vectors. Not vectors of COVID, but a vector of God's presence in the world. And we hope that that compassion, that grace, that justice can spread just as quickly as any disease. COVID-19 and Sarat are radical illnesses because they force us to confront our own humanity, our desire to run away from death, and our deep need for connectedness. While many of the people who have died from this disease did have underlying health issues, any of us in any part of the world are susceptible to the coronavirus. Looking at death on this scale reminds us that we are fragile human beings. We sing Modeh Ani, praising God for each day, because each day is a gift of God's chesed, of God's compassion, even in the best of times. In this moment of radical illness, we're being asked to be both far and close. May we cultivate the presence needed in this moment. May we wait until each of us is ready to return to the camp. And may the camp we all return to be more just and more whole. Shabbat Shalom.